Good morning and welcome to today's webinar, The Intersection of Safety and HR, presented by our sponsor, Heffernan. We're so happy you could join us. My name is Michelle Wilcox and I will be your moderator today, and I will also be monitoring questions you may have during the session. Before we open the session, let's review a couple of key items. All the webinar materials we discuss can be found on the URL currently showing on your screen. I will be sharing this URL in a follow-up email, so don't feel like you need to write it down right now. If you have trouble with your internet connection during the webinar, we recommend leaving the presentation and logging back in. We do not control your audio, your devices control the audio. So if you have audio difficulties, try adjusting the volume settings on your device. If the telephone line goes down during the call, hang up and call back again to the same number. If all lines go dead, watch the on-screen chat box for an alternative call-in number. Feel free to ask questions to provide feedback by using the chat box or questions box during the webinar. If you are using a tablet, you may need to tap on the screen for the options bar to appear, then you can select the appropriate option. We may not respond immediately, but we will work your questions or feedback into the presentation. If we can't get to your comment or question during the session, we will be online afterwards to respond, or we may follow up in an email if we run completely out of time. You may also email us at moderator@aspenrmg for up to 48 hours after the webinar. This will be a 1-hour presentation. Questions and comments are very much encouraged throughout, and the presenters will be answering questions at the end. And lastly, we have a number of upcoming webinars covering a variety of topics, including those listed on the Heffernan webinar website. In addition, we offer the mandatory preventing sexual harassment training on June 11th in 2024. With that, let's begin today's webinar, The Intersection of Safety and HR. I'm going to turn the presentation over to one of our first presentees, which is Erica Baird, and Phaedra Buxman will also be chiming in. Erica is a safety, health, and risk management consultant with over 15 years of experience in the industry and safety industries. She has the opportunity to work with a variety of industries such as construction, retail, manufacturing, education, agriculture, and service industries, and has presented on numerous safety topics over the years. Excuse me. She has a bachelor's degree in psychology and Spanish, an associate's degree in occupational safe and healthy, and has earned a number of designations in insurance and safety, including ASP, CP, CU, and ARM. She's a senior risk and safety consultant at Aspen Risk Management. Phaedra is a human resource professional for both large and small companies. She specializes in safety training and employee retention. She believes that the activities behind the scenes should always be guided by a company's best practices, and that this is invaluable to employees and employers. Her experience includes loss control, operations, human resources, retail, and banking, with her ability to maintain and coordinate with multiple safety professionals and safety management systems. She conducted HR and safety trainings for a large Fortune 500 company and feels that the safety and HR practices should be built into the culture of the company. She believes safety is taught not just by simple instruction, but by example and repetition. She has a heartfelt desire to assist people and teach them how to be safer in the way they do things, with the priority being placed upon building positive interactions on all levels and aiding in increasing and overall effectiveness of the client's loss control and safety programs. So with that, thank you, Erica, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining Phaedra and me today to talk about safety and HR. We're both pretty passionate about this subject because we've actually seen over and over again the difference that it can make when HR and safety work together, and on the other side of that, the problems that are created when they try to operate separately. So first things first, we do have a little bit of a disclaimer here, so we want to go over this, right? The information we're presenting today is general in nature, and it's just intended to give you an overview of information, right? We don't know enough about your organization to give you specific recommendations. This is just kind of generic information that we're sharing with you. And then as you ask us questions, we'll try to be a little bit more specific from there.
Thank you, Erica. When we think about safety and HR in our workplaces, it can be hard to see how these two are very interwoven into the success and profitability of an organization or even with each other. Oftentimes, these two departments may work with little strategic planning between the two, making it so that these departments exist in their own silos. But the organization and its employees would benefit greatly from seeing how these two departments intersect and how one can help the other, which in turn helps everyone in the organization. When we think about HR, some of the top items that we might think about them being responsible for are hiring and firing employees, improving overall retention, supporting the workforce and supervisors, as well as complying with regulations.
Now, while both HR and safety departments care about employees, we have different methods of reaching company goals around protecting employees, ensuring profitability, and protecting the company's reputation. For safety, the focus is typically on implementing strategies designed to prevent incidents. That could include things like training employees or enforcing safety rules. The safety department also has to be aware of OSHA regulations and needs to ensure that operations are in compliance with these.
So let's look at how safety and HR intersect. Each department needs to hire and train employees. HR usually plays a role in the following aspects: the interview and hiring process, the new hire orientation, disciplinary action and recognition, regulatory compliance, consistency for the organization, but safety also has a key part in each of those items. Erica, how is it that safety can participate in these aspects?
Yeah, actually, safety can be heavily involved in each aspect of the employee-employer relationship. And it's important to include and talk about the safety culture at every level, starting with the hiring process. If our goal with safety is to protect our employees, the last thing we want to do is to hire somebody who isn't going to fit our safety culture. HR looks at whether the employee will fit the workplace culture already during that hiring process, right? But getting a feel for how they're going to fit into the safety culture is also important. So they can ask questions to get an idea of how much safety knowledge and exposure an applicant has, and if they're likely to follow safety rules or disregard them during that hiring process, right? They can ask all those questions. Once that person's hired, the new hire orientation should focus heavily on safety as a company value. It should be reinforced by every level of the organization, from the company president to the supervisor to the safety manager to that new hire's coworkers. But it also has to be enforced. The company's disciplinary action plan should also apply to safety, and the process should be consistent, whether the employee's in trouble for coming in late or for not wearing their safety glasses. Now, the other side of that is recognizing employees for doing the right thing. When safety and HR work together to recognize and discipline employees, that consistency helps to reinforce safety expectations. And consistency is really important as it relates to other departments as well. If the production crew follows one guideline and the maintenance team follows a different one, then you're probably going to run into issues. So consistency between the two ensures that everyone understands the rules, they're applied the same, and it also helps you with compliance. The regulations may affect safety and HR differently, but the importance of staying on top of those changing standards and meeting or exceeding what's required is the same. That's going to bring us to that first poll question there.
Michelle is going to launch that for us, and she'll tell us all how it works.
Does your organization have the following? A, interview/hiring process. B, new hire orientation. C, disciplinary action. D, employee recognition. Or E, I'm not sure. You guys can all select your responses and we'll tally them up. Okay, it looks like we've got about 67% that have voted. I'm going to wait one more second here. So
one whole second?
One whole second. A majority looks like interview a hiring process at 97%. 95% says new hire orientation, and then it goes down from there.
Okay, so that's good. That gives us the idea that right when you're bringing people on, they're going through that interviewing process. They're going through an orientation before they actually start doing the work. And then maybe we're kind of following off at that disciplinary action and then employee recognition. So that makes some sense. All right. All right. So we're going to talk about COVID for a minute. And I know that that's not popular and it's the last thing we even want to think about at this point. But the reason why we bring it up is because when we look at HR and safety departments working together, COVID actually gives us a really great example. So bear with me. I'm going to drag you all back to January and February of 2020 just for a couple of minutes. And I want to remind you of what we were dealing with at that point, right? We had been watching China get ravaged by a virus that nobody had seen before and nobody knew anything about. We knew it was contagious, but other than that, we didn't know how it was spread. And I don't know if you're like me, but I was kind of hoping it wasn't going to come to the United States, right? And then all of a sudden we had a couple of cases and then it was just here, right? So different states tried to provide direction, starting with just shutting things down because they had this theory that if we went for 2 whole weeks without interacting with others, the virus would have run its course and we could go back to normal. So all but essential operations closed their doors. But then that didn't work. And then we had to figure out how to reopen businesses and still keep employees safe. You guys remember who did that? It was safety and HR working together to create plans to bring everybody back to work and to try to do it in the safest way possible. So every company was dealing with something different and we were all looking to the CDC for guidance. And the guidance back then was to wear a cloth mask and to keep 6 feet away from others. So we redesigned workstations, we added partitions to separate people from anyone that they had to speak to face to face. We mandated the use of face masks. We trained employees so that they would understand what was required and what symptoms looked like, and we enforced the rules. And then the situation kept changing because soon we found out the virus was airborne and 6 feet might help a little, but it wasn't doing us as much good as we thought. We got to know all the different types of masks that were available, and then we all tried to find masks for employees to wear at work, but there was a shortage even for healthcare workers back then, right? We wrote plans for COVID prevention in states where it was required, and then we had to modify them after every single rule change, and it was exhausting, right? But HR and safety departments got through it together. And we actually prevented illnesses. Some companies had only a handful or even no work-related COVID illnesses. So this is a good example of what can be accomplished when safety and HR departments work together.
COVID-19 was a great example of HR and safety working hand in hand, but at a safe distance, as Erica has just talked to us about. But why might it have worked so well? Part of that is because everyone was talking about it. We had reminders in front of us from when we woke up until we went to bed. They were everywhere all the time. These consistent reminders with reinforcement of the controls that had been developed and implemented helped to serve as ongoing reinforcement of keeping our distance, washing our hands, using hand sanitizer, as well as other forms of PPE. These things, these controls, and the actions that we took pretty much became second nature to us. If you want another simple example, think about seat belts. Back in the 80s and 90s, we were all told click it or ticket, right? It was constantly there in the 80s and 90s as an advertisement. Then the children who grew up then with the parents enforcing it, now those people naturally, for the most part, put on their seatbelts as they're supposed to. It is that consistency in doing the same things, that repetition goes a long ways. So humans do very well with repetition, and we can look at these examples of how doing that and HR and safety working together help control the hazards and protect employees.
So with that, I'm going to launch the second poll. How involved is HR in safety at your organization? A, they participate in facility walkthroughs. B, they are involved in disciplinary action. C, they participate on the safety committee. D, they are separate department. E, they are involved in all of these. And we appreciate your participation. Everybody is quick to be selecting their opinions. And with this many options, it's kind of hard to tell. And this is, so looks like, I'm going to wait until we get about 70% that have voted.
So Michelle, because this is the second time we've done a similar action, are we learning at a quicker pace? Is that what you're telling us? We're doing more?
Well, I hope so. Okay, it looks like majority says they are involved in disciplinary action. That's B. Second most is that they are involved in all of the above, and I'll post those now, and you guys can continue.
Okay, that's great. Actually, we're going to talk about why we suggest them being involved in all of those facility walkthroughs, disciplinary action, and safety committees. So basically, those are all related to the three primary safety duties, right? Safety departments are usually responsible for developing those safety programs, for running safety committees, and for doing those facility walkthroughs, right? Traditional safety roles, right? But if we can engage HR in these, I'm going to explain how that can help to improve your overall results. So let's say you're writing a safety program. You always want it to reflect your company's specific operations. It's an OSHA requirement, so you definitely want to be able to do that. But you also want it to be consistent with other programs in place at your company, right? So I want you to think about if you've ever started working on writing a safety program and then you found out that somebody in HR was working on something similar, or they already had a program in place and it just wasn't with the other safety documents, right? If you have to develop a new safety program or you're updating an old one, it's a great idea to have your HR department look it over. You want them to know what you're working on so that they can tell you if they already have something. And then you want to get their input to make sure that your program that you're writing is in line with all your other company policies. That consistency is really important for employees. It reinforces the concept of safety as a value when your safety programs are in line with other company policies and everybody's on the same page. The safety committee is another place where HR can help. As you're discussing safety issues and trying to figure out how to correct a hazard or what to do about a recent incident, the HR department representative can provide guidance to ensure that whatever strategy you implement to correct the situation, it's in line with other company policies. They can also provide feedback on regulations specific to operations that might force you to change your strategy. And it is always better to know about that in advance so that you don't have to change something that you've already implemented. It can also be helpful for HR to do facility walks with you. It helps them to better understand your operations and the work conditions, which is beneficial when they're hiring new employees and if they're answering questions from prospective employees. It also lets you add a new set of eyes to the inspection process. As they ask questions to better understand how things work, they might actually spot something that you've been walking past for years. So having a different point of view on these walks can help you to better protect employees. And I would also encourage you to have employees from other departments occasionally join you on those inspections to get those different sets of eyes in there looking at the operations.
Thank you, Erica. So let's take a little deeper look into how HR and safety continue to intersect. For the hiring process, HR can build some questions into the interview formats, and these can be simple questions, such as, what was safety like at the last company you worked for? What role did you play in safety in your previous positions? How can you help keep yourself and others safe at work? Now, if a candidate has a negative answer or makes statements that shows that they may view safety in a negative manner, that might not be a good candidate for you, for your operations, for your company. Now, what are some examples of maybe a negative response, right? When you ask them, what was safety like at your last company? If they immediately launch into the awful safety guy, always, chasing them around, hounding them about wearing their safety glasses and their PPE and how that was a problem. Okay, that's not how we want to view safety, right? We want people to be wearing the PPE. There's a lot of reasons we need them to wear PPE. So maybe we don't want somebody who views PPE negatively or reinforcement. When you ask them, what role did you play in safety in your previous positions? If their go-to response is, I didn't have any role in safety, now maybe we should dig. This is an opening for us. So why do we want to dig? Well, isn't safety kind of part of everybody's role? Even if it's an office position, that is making sure that rugs aren't flipped up on the corners, that cords are maintained, that they use good ergonomics. I mean, safety really is part of everybody's role. Now, it's possible they came from a company with poor safety culture, and that's a little different. So you can always ask those questions. Next, another thing that HR can help do is we can help filter the candidates so that hiring managers have the right person for the job. And how do we do that? Well, we can set up pre-hire medical and drug screening with proper pre-hire medical and drug screens, and that helps us with proper job descriptions. HR can have those medical requirements that are job specific, right? That goes into the essential functions of the job. And we would work with an occupational clinic, and we would have those pre-hire, post-offer, of course, tests conducted with that clinic. Now they have our job descriptions, they know what the essential functions are, they know what we need. And by having these requirements and having this process in place, HR can help managers ensure that they have a good candidate for the positions that they are hiring for.
And that takes us right into orientation. So the best time to establish safety as a value at an organization is at the very beginning. Showing a united front is one way to do this. As an employee goes through training, they're going to get their employee handbook and all these HR policies are going to be covered, right? But safety should also be part of that session. So integrate the IIPP and company safety rules and expectations into this initial introduction to the company and let them hear about safety from different people and different departments. Now, organizations handle orientation differently depending on their size and the number of people that they're hiring at any given time. But one way to show a united front is for everyone to be consistent in the messaging about safety. So sometimes HR does the full orientation and then a supervisor picks up with on-the-job training. In other organizations, safety is more involved. That safety department gets involved in presenting the program to each new hire or to groups of new hires. In any case, the message from the executive level to HR to the safety department and the employee supervisor has to be the same. And that is that safety is integral to our operations and every employee plays a role. You want to set out the company's expectations for safety, including how that ties to disciplinary action. Ask new employees to contribute to your safety culture by telling their supervisor if they have any safety concerns and encouraging them to ask questions as they go through training to make sure that they understand how to do their different job duties in the safest way possible. Now, if an employee does raise concern, it's really important to investigate those concerns and follow up with that person. Even if a hazard isn't identified, you want to go back and talk to that person and explain what you learned and how it will be addressed or why it isn't considered a hazard.
HR gets to help lay the groundwork before accidents happen. And as with nearly everything that we know about or everything that we do, the more that we know, the better our preparations, then the better the outcome, as well as hopefully the smoother the process can be. The HR team should have the following processes in place before an accident has happened. Designated clinics to be used, know who's going to provide transportation, who needs to be notified, understand whether or not this is an OSHA reportable incident. Whew, that's a tongue twister today. And then managers should be trained on these items and they should know where to find the resources for them. So as you heard from the beginning with me, I like repetition. So just like with other things in life, we want to send out reminders, providing updates on a regular basis, giving refreshers as to where this information is, how to access it, and making sure that managers have access to it as needed.
With that, I'm sorry, go ahead, Erica.
You're jumping on the poll questions, Michelle. So Phaedra just talked about how important it is to have a plan in place when an accident happens, right? Everybody needs to know in advance what they're supposed to do so that they're prepared. This idea also extends outside of your organization. Typically, when somebody's injured, claims management is handled by human resources. But by working together to establish policies for return to work, you can reduce the number of indemnity claims that you have and reduce claims costs overall. So this should start with the clinic that you use for treating employees. You want to share your policies and procedures with others who can have an impact on claims after an accident occurs. So the clinic needs to know that you have a policy to return employees to work as soon as possible. And to make their jobs easier, you can provide them with a copy of your job descriptions, or you can agree to send one with an employee if they go in for treatment. The medical provider can then see what physical capabilities that employee needs to have in order to do their job, and that can help them with designing restrictions for return to work. If they know that you want to bring everyone back as soon as possible and that you're going to provide modified work for them, then they're only going to take people off work who really can't work at all. This can impact goals that both HR and safety have as far as reducing the cost of claims and bringing employees back to work so you don't have to temporarily fill their position. Now, it's also helpful to have a good relationship with your fire department. And I'm not talking about that annual inspection that the fire marshal does. The fire department can also help you with training employees to use extinguishers, and they can be very useful in determining how to meet building code and fire safety requirements. Now, beyond that, it's also important for them to be familiar with your facility so that if there is a serious injury, they can respond appropriately because they already know where to go, what the building looks like what the layout is, and what kinds of hazards they might encounter while they're on site. That enables them to do their jobs more quickly and to get to your injured employee faster. That relationship can also help you to improve safety compliance.
So is that my cue?
That's your cue.
Repetition.
Here's the third polling question. My organization does an accident investigation after what? A, near miss accidents. B, property damage incidents. C, injury incidents. Or D, all of the above. Or E, none of the above. So let's just take a look-see here. And we did have somebody that had questioned that they don't have a safety department. Is there only a firm of 11 employees? So what would you recommend to those that don't have an actual department, ladies?
Right. So you probably have someone who is responsible for aspects of your safety. And if you are the operations person or the HR person and you have that responsibility, there are at least 4 programs that you're required to have in writing, right? So you need to make sure that you know what those are. You need to know what your employee exposures are at your workplaces. Your most likely, if you're attending here, you're a Heffernan Insurance client, and your Heffernan broker can probably provide you some assistance in answering some of those other questions. But you should know the basics of workplace safety, and there are a ton of resources that you can tap into. But the first place I would start is absolutely with your insurance broker. They're going to have online resources for you. They're going to get you pointed in the right direction, and they may be able to get you some on-site resources. But jot down the things that you have specific questions about, and working with your supervisors, right? Your operational managers, your production managers, you want to find out, ask them what employees are talking about. And if you're concerned about injuries, a good place to get a bird's eye view, right, is your work comp injury loss data. So take a look at your OSHA logs. Are you spotting trends? Or do you have first aid kits? Are you keeping first aid logs? If you keep first aid logs, you can check and see, are you having a lot of lacerations? Are you using a lot of eye wash? Then if that's the case, we need to find out why we're regularly using those things and get some controls in place. Erica and I are absolutely here to support you in any of your questions, and our emails will be on the PowerPoint, which you can download from the site that Michelle showed you at the beginning, but we're here to assist you in those needs as well.
Yeah, and we'll also send a follow-up email with the link to access the presentation. Thank you, Phaedra, for that explanation. And getting back to the poll, it looks like 55% say all of above, 45% says injury incidents, 32% say property damage incidents.
Okay, so a little bit of a combo. I think you can choose injury and property damage. So it sounds like maybe some people did that. Not a lot of near miss incidents, but we did have that good percentage of people who said all of the above. So good to know. All right, so you will find that we encourage you to investigate near miss incidents so that you can learn from the ones where people didn't get hurt and prevent people from actually having an injury, just as important as those injury incidents. And then also property damage incidents, right? You want to avoid damaging structure, damaging vehicles, all of those kinds of things. The thing is that once you have an accident and it's happened and you have an employee who's injured and has to get medical treatment, then you're going to end up filing a claim. And at that point, somebody has to be responsible for managing the claim. And then somebody's usually responsible for investigating the incident. Now, if you're in a smaller organization, it all might fall on you. If you're in a larger organization, that can kind of be split, right, between HR and safety. Whatever that procedure is, it's important that everybody knows who's doing what so they both get done. And if it is two parties, that they're communicating, because the information that's learned from the accident investigation can impact the claim and vice versa. So for example, if the investigation determines that the employee was under the influence of drugs or alcohol when they were injured, depending on the state that you're in, that could be a determining factor in how that claim is handled. And on the other hand, if the injured worker went to the clinic and you're investigating that injury based on it being a cut finger, but the claim comes back and says the employee has a sprained ankle, then as the investigator, you might need more information about how that incident occurred. So often, as I said before, HR manages the claims and the safety department does the investigation. But making sure that employee is properly cared for and brought back to work actually requires both. So when an accident investigation is completed, the findings have to make sense to everyone. In order for HR to understand the findings, they might need a good understanding of your operations, which they would get from doing those facility walks with the safety department and interacting with other employees. It can also be really helpful to complete the investigation together, because having somebody else to bounce ideas off of during the investigation is helpful, but discussing it ensures that both safety and HR understand what went wrong and what needs to be done to fix it.
Thank you, Erica. HR can help show that you care. So this is after the accident has occurred. This is where we get into some of the more human aspects of how HR can help in the loss control process. This is the more touchy-feely bit, a bit more of my favorite section outside of, okay, well, I like all of it. I'm not going to pretend. But what we know is that communication is key, and it should be a joint effort. A lot of that falls on HR, but safety and the employee supervisor can help support this effort. If the employee thinks or feels that the company doesn't want them back or views them in a negative manner, this can create barriers to the employee's recovery and return. You know, those barriers, they may not even really exist, but they could be presumed to exist. If the employer shows compassion for the employee, it can go a long way toward fostering positive feelings and interactions. Don't stop communicating with an injured employee because they have a work comp claim. A simple way to check in with an employee is just by sending them a get well card. Call them, see how the medical visit went. Are they comfortable with the medical treatment? Do they need assistance with their claim? Sometimes the claim process can be overwhelming for an injured employee who's really just looking to get the treatment that they need. If HR or a manager can help them to understand the process, answer their questions, or help them find the answers they need, maybe they need help with the paperwork so that they can keep the claim moving forward. It can keep the employee from feeling that they need an outside advocate, like an attorney, to help them. So we can help them, and we can do a little preventative as well. Let them know that they are still important, and that based on their doctor's requirements, following up on those restrictions, right? Job descriptions, what they can or can't do. So we want to work within those restrictions and let them know that the company is looking forward to having them returning to work. We want to keep track of their information and their treatment information for the timelines of those. Make sure that you're setting follow-up reminders with about the medical provider, with the employee, and with the claims manager. We all know repetition, right? And reminders. I like reminders. If the company doesn't have a job that fits within the employee's restrictions, consider partnering with an outside agency that will help return the employee to work and help in the process of getting them accommodations for their restrictions.
So HR does a really great job of showing employees that the company cares, but there are some studies out there that suggest that it can be better to have a supervisor involved in this. And that's because employees typically have a relationship with their supervisor and with their coworkers and not with HR, right? So maintaining that relationship with their supervisor helps them to feel more connected to the company. So you can have the supervisor involved in those periodic check-ins. It's great if that employee ended up at the hospital for the supervisor to stop by and see how they're doing, or even to get everybody to sign a get well card and give it to the employee, right? All of these little steps help with that relationship and help to reassure the employee that their job is still there waiting for them and that their coworkers care about them. One other idea for working together is to use your safety committee for coming up with ideas for return to work based on employee restrictions, right? So you have all these internal resources that you can take advantage of to figure out how to manage that claim and keep it moving forward.
HR is going to help manage the claim. Again, we're continuing with this post-accident portion. So as the employer, it's important to stay in communication with the claims manager as well. We're going to stay informed, and we're going to do that by communicating with the insurance company. We need to make sure we have all of our paperwork in order. We're going to share if we have concerns or that if there were items that were learned during the accident investigation that might be relevant to the claim. We want to share that with the claims manager. We want to notify them if other employees report red flags. So the insurance company is going to determine if something is compensable. They're also going to determine if those red flags need to be further investigated based upon applicable law. We should follow up on the status of a claim until it is closed. By staying actively engaged with the employee, the clinic, and the claims manager, then HR is going to be able to help get the employee back to work sooner and get that claim closed in a timely manner. By doing these things to the claim, as well as reduce the likelihood of a litigated claim.
I think you cut out a little bit there, but I think what you were saying there was HR can help to reduce that total cost, right? In addition to helping prevent those litigated claims.
Thank you, Erica. That's exactly right. So this one, you'll see on your screen, it says a poll, but we want to mix things up a little. So you should have your question or chat box. Hopefully you have found that by now. And this is going to be a free flow response. The question that we have for you is, what can HR or managers do to help an employee return to work sooner? So over the things that you've heard throughout the presentation for the past 30 plus minutes, what things have you learned that you think employers, managers, HR can do to help get that employee back to work sooner? We're going to have Michelle check the question in chat box, and she'll tell us a few of the answers that you have typed in for us.
So I'm looking right now. It looks like constant communication with the employer or with the employee, sorry. Interactive process. Stay in touch with the employee to ensure all the questions are answered. Show compassion. Make an employee feel wanted and missed. Communication. It looks like a lot of people are siding with the communication.
Yeah, that communication is important.
Yeah, communication is clearly the majority here with the answers. And thank you guys all for participating. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Erica.
All right, so HR can provide some guidelines, which is really important for managers and supervisors who have a lot of responsibilities, everything from meeting production requirements to maintaining equipment to ensuring that employees are safe, right? Safety in and of itself is a lot to handle, especially in a company that doesn't have a dedicated safety department. A new manager or a supervisor may not always be aware of all of the responsibilities that they're taking on when they accept that promotion. So when a person transfers from one position to another, they should receive some training so that they understand their new job duties. And a lot of times that comes from HR. In terms of safety, managers and supervisors are responsible for enforcing safety rules, training employees, and recognizing and correcting hazards. But beyond that, they also need to take the time to listen to their employees and address their concerns. Now, in addition to ensuring that managers understand their responsibilities as it relates to employee safety, it's also helpful to provide them with resources and guidelines to follow for how to handle different situations. And accidents are a prime example because that's an emergency and it can be jarring depending on what has occurred, right? So if the manager has a policy to follow that supports HR's needs, it can make the entire situation less stressful for everybody involved. So have a list of items that HR needs from the manager and a timeline for submitting them. If you want the manager to fill out that first notice of loss form, or they're supposed to send the employee with certain documents to take to the clinic or to provide contact information or any other employee documentation, they really need to know that ahead of time. They also need to know who to contact when an incident has occurred and where they're supposed to send the injured worker. So Phaedra talked about a lot of these things earlier, but having that clear process can make a big difference for a manager, especially somebody who's newer and maybe hasn't had a lot of employee injuries.
HR gets to continue helping with the employee relations piece. HR should take the lead in making sure managers are trained that when an employee reports an injury, they're not bad employees filing fake claims, right? I'm making some air quotes over here. HR needs to work with and train the managers to try and recognize and avoid bias and for them not to use negative connotations about workplace injuries and injured employees, that these types of thoughts or feelings are not beneficial to the company's culture. There are some different statistics with different numbers out there, but one that I like is about the actual percentage of total work comp claims, right? So we're talking about employee fraudulent work comp claims. So one of the studies says that out of all work comp claims, just as tiny 1 to 2% by the employees is actual work comp fraud. When you are talking about that small of a number, we don't want to use fake claims, right, as our go-to. So let's make sure that we don't set a tone in our company that work comp claims are filed by bad employees with fake claims. Let's not use that type of negativity when we're training our managers, and make sure that they aren't using that in their conversations when they're out doing their job, talking with other employees or other supervisors. Instead of that, why don't we build a safety culture of caring? We can inform employees that reporting unsafe items and hazards, even potential hazards, it's a positive thing. Then as the employer, we want to make sure that those items are corrected and follow up on them and follow up with the reporting employee. By acting on, controlling, and correcting hazards, employees are going to be shown that the employer cares about them and their safety. Of course, the employer should also regularly remind employees that they are to report injuries, even if it's a minor injury or, like we talked about earlier, a near miss. We want to report those things promptly. This demonstrates the employer's desire to keep employees safe, get them the proper treatment that they may need, as well as reinforcing some positive views of safety and the care of the employees versus them being viewed in a negative manner. That isn't to say that an employer finds injuries to be a positive thing, but we can set the stage for those interactions, and it can help us build our safety culture through positive reinforcement. The accident investigation should keep drilling down on the why an accident or an incident happened. The report's outcome shouldn't stop or be solely based on the employee wasn't following the safety guidelines. Well, why? Why didn't that employee follow the guidelines? Did they not have the PPE they needed? Did the PPE not fit? Did they not have the right equipment? Was the equipment in disrepair, right? Why? Why? Keep going back. There's an entire list of whys, and it's important to keep going back until we find the answer. It's that fundamental reason that the incident occurred. So if we changed that thing, it could have created a totally different outcome. Now, Erica and I, we are a little different on our drilling back into the whys. I'm down with going back to creation. Erica thinks we don't need to go that far. That's okay. We just want to keep going as far back as we can until we can see what the root cause is or what the root cause was. Now, we want to strive to remove barriers in communication and open up those pathways. Part of that communication means explaining to the employees why the accident investigation is taking place. Let them know this isn't to place blame on somebody, but it's to fix the hazard, to try to prevent it from future injuries, to try to prevent future injuries, sorry.
All right, I jumped ahead a couple slides right in the middle of your presentation there. I apologize for that. Okay, so look, safety cultures are based on transparency, and that's part of what Phaedra is referring to when she talks about explaining why you're doing an accident investigation, right? You want employees to understand why you're doing these things. It makes them more willing to participate. Now, when those investigations take place or new procedures are implemented, afterwards, you want to meet with employees to provide them with an explanation. You want to tell them what you learned in the investigation, listen to their concerns, and then explain why different procedures have been implemented. The more they understand, the more likely it is that they're going to follow your new procedures. And then also, they may raise some concerns that give you additional input that changes your initial plan. And that input is really valuable to you. So to have a safety culture, you have to listen to other points of view and you have to incorporate that information into your overall plan. Safety communication has to go both ways. That's an OSHA requirement. You want to hear what employees are concerned about, and you have to address their concerns. We've spoken a couple of times about how safety should be a company value. The reason we talk about safety as a value is because values don't change. They're a compass that guides our way. Priorities change. When safety is only a priority, something else can easily become more important. Usually it's production, right? One way to show that safety is a value is to make it part of everyone's evaluations. When complying with your safety rules and engaging in the safety culture is an expectation that every employee is striving to meet, you can strengthen your safety culture. Well, managers and safety people can sometimes get stuck in a rut of correcting issues. They're constantly reminding other employees to wear the right PPE or slow down or lift with your legs, right? As a result, we can lose sight of what's being done right, and HR can help us with that. Actually, we can support each other. Sometimes the better way to correct a behavior issue is not to keep trying to enforce it, but instead to call out and recognize the people who are doing it right. That's known as positive reinforcement, and it can be really powerful when you do it right. So we want to talk about a few ways to reinforce good behavior.
That's right. So we're going to start with recognizing it. Erica just mentioned that recognizing good behavior is a great thing to do when we see it. Sometimes it's just a simple thanks goes a long ways. Thanks for wearing your PPE. Thank you for using good lifting techniques. How about for those of us that work in an office? Thank you for getting up and walking around for a couple minutes and stretching, right? Get out of your desk, adjust your posture. So thanks for moving the cord out of the walkway. And whatever that good behavior is, let's recognize it. Let's use that positive reinforcement. Some organizations have formal recognition programs. That might be just as simple as handing out a $5 gift card when somebody's observed doing the right thing, or entering them into a drawing for a prize. You can sponsor a lunch for employees to express your gratitude for their dedication and safety. Now, some of you might be wondering how OSHA looks at recognition programs. As long as what you're doing isn't a huge reward that would discourage someone from reporting an incident, it's an acceptable form of recognition. If employees have to wait an entire year to be rewarded, then the reward is maybe a week-long vacation for two to the Caribbean, and only one incident would make people ineligible for that. That's probably discouraging people from reporting injuries. However, if the reward is lunch or a nominal gift card or a small bonus, then the eligibility is based on each individual, and it's over a short period of time, and then it resets, you're probably less likely to have a little bit of a problem with that program. These programs have to be designed to avoid discouraging employees from reporting accidents, but they can also be used to reinforce safe behavior and express your gratitude.
So remember earlier we were talking about transparency. The only way you're going to get employees to do what you need them to do in terms of safety is to talk about it and talk about it and talk about it, right? You have to find the reason that motivates each of them to do what you need. So explaining why you want them to do something can help. That logic and reasoning is going to work with some people, but for others, you'll have to find other ways to reach them. So I want to talk about a really common issue, and that's using safety glasses. Lots of facilities require employees to wear safety glasses when doing certain tasks, and a lot of employees ignore this rule. I see it all the time when I'm walking through facilities. So how do you change that? I'd encourage you to talk to employees, explain that why, right? You want them to wear their safety glasses because you don't want them to damage their eyes. Now, if that's not enough, ask them why they don't wear them. Maybe they find them uncomfortable or the lenses keep fogging up, right? Then fix the problem and come back to them and push them to do it again. Hey, I wanted to let you know, because you told me about the problems you were having, that we bought some new anti-fog wipes, and that's going to help keep those lenses from fogging over. And now we have 4 different sizes of safety glasses because we realized that what we had before didn't fit everyone, and we wanted to make sure that we had some different options. Then ask them, hey, do you mind trying this out and letting me know how it goes? You're going to pull them into your safety program by involving them in fixing a problem, and that's a great way to do that. Another idea at your next safety meeting, if you're not focusing on safety glasses again, just take 1 minute from another topic and thank somebody who always wears their safety glasses. That's sneaking in that positive reinforcement. If you catch the person who's your holdout wearing their safety glasses, make it a big deal in a way that works for them. You don't want to embarrass them, right? Not everybody wants to be called out at a meeting. If that's their thing, go ahead and call them out. But if they're shy, just thank them one-on-one. Either way, it's still recognition.
So we're also going to use reminders because I like consistent, regular reinforcement of ideas. Before we move on to that, another thing to remember is as the employer, our employees' PPE is our responsibility. That means we need to have a variety of sizes and shapes, styles, and types so that it fits that employee properly, right? Employees are less likely to wear their PPE if it's ill-fitting. And for some, right, the wrong sized smock could become a hazard if it's oversized, right? A trip hazard, it could get caught, gloves could get caught in things. So let's make sure that as the employer, we are reviewing the PPE, keeping an eye on our workforce, seeing who's wearing it. Somebody isn't wearing it. Here we go. Let's use some whys. Why aren't they wearing it? Because they don't like it, or is it because it doesn't fit good? So don't forget to be mindful of the PPE. Now, there are a lot of ways to remind employees about our safety rules. We've talked about a few, and we can bring up some common problems in some safety meetings. We can speak directly with employees. We can go back to something that we got right during COVID, right? We had posters everywhere. So let's use posters as reminders for some of the common things that we see. An example of that in certain areas is going to be at retail stores where it says no shirt, no shoes, no service, right? That's clear. It's to the point. We can understand it. So let's use clear, simple reminders for safety. That can be an example of safety glasses are required beyond this point, or hard hats required on a job site. Just simple, easy visual cues for people. Some companies might post that they've gone a certain amount of days without work-related injuries. That's not necessarily a specific safety rule, but it's a reminder that the work site is focused on safety. So whether reminders are verbal or written, it's always great to reinforce good behavior.
And then I wanted to talk about one of the biggest mistakes that we can make as managers and supervisors, and that is not following the safety rules that we put in place. If you don't follow the safety rules, you can't expect your employees to do anything different. So don't be that manager who doesn't wear the right PPE. Always make sure you have your PPE available And if you forgot it, go back and get it so that you're setting the right example for everybody else.
All right, so once more, we're doing the same this time that we did last time, repetition. So in your question or chat box, you're going to type for us something that you learned from today's presentation, something that you hopefully will take back to your organization, back to your operation that is helpful. So we'll give everybody, a couple 20, 30 seconds to tippy-tappy away and type us some information. Once we start getting a few of those, Michelle's going to share a couple, and then Erica will wrap us up with our summary.
And in the meantime, while we're waiting for these, we had a question: how would you handle an employee that communicates with HR management that they are better, but after each doctor's visit, their restrictions get worse?
We're silent because we're thinking. That's a really good question.
I was like, did I lose audio?
So what you're having is a little bit of a conflict between what the doctor, right? So what the doctor's information is saying is what it sounds like, and what the injured employee, right? The injured employee is coming back after their recent doctor visit and they're saying, okay, I'm better, but the notation from the doctor is this person's restrictions have increased in severity. That to me would signal that it is time for HR and the supervisor to get the job description, the essential job functions, and make a communication with the provider, with the healthcare provider. Find out, here's what I'm seeing. Can you explain this to me? Here's this person's job description. Here's their essential job functions. Can you tell me where is this going? So that's when you set that appointment. Erica, any input from you?
I would also say that you can also use the claims examiner that's assigned to that claim, so you can go through them if you're not comfortable reaching out to the provider yourself and say, look, this person's coming back and saying that they're better and they want to go back to work, but I'm seeing that the doctor keeps making their restrictions more and more restrictive. So it's making it hard for us to accommodate, but the person wants to come back to work. There's some kind of disconnect here. The examiner can also help you with that kind of issue. And I encourage you to always talk to the examiners and stay in touch with them, have a good open line of communication with them, because they can help you with resolving those kinds of issues.
Thank you.
That makes sense. Thank you, girls. Okay, so we've got importance of working together, listen to the employee and retain supervisors, different ways to reinforce good behavior. We got a lot of comments. Thank you very much, everybody, for participating. Different ways to reinforce good behavior. I think I already said that one. Repetition, repetition, repetition. That's for you.
Yes, it's working.
Involving safety is corrective action can improve consistency with corrective action across all departments in company. Safety is a responsibility in the workplace. Involve employees in safety meetings and get their input. Follow up more closely with EEs out on workers' comp. So I think it looks like a lot of people got a lot of different feedback from this, and it was very informative. So with that, I'll let Miss Erica wrap it up.
Okay, wow, really, everybody took away something good, so I'm really happy about that. All right, so we started out by pointing out some of the areas and goals that safety and HR share, and then we went on to discuss how working together on those shared points can improve results for both departments. With hiring and new employees, safety needs to be more involved to help find the right people right up front and to ensure that safety expectations are set from the very beginning. And then from there, we jumped into another common intersection, those accidents and claims. And we talked about how HR can help safety with planning ahead for the worst, and how safety can include HR on investigations. And then the two can share information to work together and get that claim resolved by actively caring for the injured worker, tracking the progress of the claim, and returning employees to work. And then finally, we talked about manager responsibilities, understanding protocols, and using positive reinforcement to get better results. We called this the intersection of safety and HR, but the reality is that there's a lot of overlap between the two departments. to have a successful safety program and culture, the two really have to work together, whether that's two departments or it's an HR person who's working with an operations manager. It's going to be different at every company that joined us today. But we hope that we gave you some ideas for how to use each other to reach your goals, because we are all better together. And with that, those are our email addresses if you need to reach us, and Michelle's going to share the information at the end.
Do you have anything else, Ms. Phaedra, to add?
Only that we really appreciate everybody attending today, and the numbers are quickly dropping off. So I'm thinking everybody's kind of rolling out to go on to their next big adventures, and we look forward to seeing you all next time. Thank you so much.
And we thank both of you, Erica and Phaedra, for being with us today. And everybody, thank you for attending today's webinar presented by Heffernan. We'll send you information by email with instructions on how to access a copy of the presentation on our website. We appreciate Phaedra and Erica's time and expertise. We hope all the attendees found today's webinar to be a valuable use of your time. Be sure to join us next week on the 23rd for stronger, safer, healthier strategies for championing and revitalizing workplace webinar. Tongue twister. All right. Thank everybody and have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.